There's a reporter who still is convinced I speak Spanish because he doesn't speak English.
You're listening to Dots, Lines, and Destinations, a travel podcast with hosts Stephen Seagraves, Fosma Moon, and Seth Miller. Hello, and welcome to episode 356 of Dots, Lines, and Destinations. I'm Stephen Seagraves, joined by Seth Miller and Fosma Moon. Hey, guys.
Hello.
Hail, hail. Hail, hail. The gang's all here.
Yeah. How'd you guys get around without me?
We behaved relatively.
Ish. No complaints came in, but I'm not sure if that's because people just stopped bothering to listen if you're not around or not.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, from what I read, Foz is smug, and and I've got a smug sarcasm, which I don't even know what that means.
I'd go with it, man. I think that's a badge, badge of pride to wear.
Let's start off, I think, with the biggest news. I think, personally, maybe because it affects me, because I fly United. But let's talk about United's new routes that they announced. This happened, when was this?
Last Thursday.
Thursday night? Yeah.
Last Wednesday? Sorry. The party was Wednesday. The actual announcement came out Thursday morning.
And did they ever, explain the clues?
They did. They put out a whole video explaining the clues. So, Oscar's cameo as driving the tug or the little cart, his name was Maximilian something that started with a P, and the MXP in there was supposed to be your clue that they were going to increase service to Milan.
Oh, well.
and believe it or not, that was one of the better and more explainable ones. The UA flight number, they had a gate in, I think it was supposed to be Dulles, but they had the Dulles to Jordan, to Amman Jordan flight.
Yeah.
They had was flight number 15366 or something like that. It was some random 5-digit number. And I think actually the times on the display were accurate for departure time and arrival time +1. But you were supposed to know to multiply it by 8 and then divide it by 13 or something. And then that was the distance of the route. And there's no explanation of why you would have had those other numbers at hand that I could figure out. So some was better than others.
I didn't realize you needed a degree in calculus to figure this.
Dude, a degree in calculus would have been easy. This was just making shit up.
This sounds like a failure in marketing.
Yes and no. It doesn't matter because everybody was talking about it online.
Yeah. I mean,
not everybody, but enough people were talking about it. It is quality earned media. From a marketing perspective, they win in that context.
And I will say that, a lot of people I saw posting all thought the pins on the back of the backpack were the biggest news. And those were the routes that were resuming service.
Back. Right.
Yeah.
So that was the thing is people oh, Porto. I was I swear they had Porto. As people started naming some of those, I was I didn't bother to look up. And I'm pretty sure some of these existed already. And it turns out all of them did at some point. So that part of it was a little, obviously a nod to some of the things the Milan was increase in service. It's not a new route, or maybe Chicago to Milan is a new route, but not a new destination. But anyway, the new destinations there were 5 of them. Palma de Mallorca. What else we got? Punta Delgado.
In the Azores.
Palma de Mallorca is in Spain. Another Spanish one.
It's Tenerife.
Tenerife, right, in the Canary Islands.
Yeah.
The Jordan route that I just mentioned, Dulles to Amman.
Yep.
And the other Newark route was, I don't remember now. Well, shit. Bergen, Norway.
Bergen.
Sorry, yeah. I had to play back the appetizers they served at the route launch announcement party in New York City that I went to. They had appetizers from each of the destinations, so I had to remember what Norway was.
What was the appetizer from Norway?
Much to the disappointment apparently of you and my friend from Norway who asked about it, it was not lutefisk. It was just little smoked salmon on brown bread.
Oh, well, darn.
Yeah.
Make it
as I said to her, and I will now say to you and the rest of our listeners, they actually want people to still show up.
Foz, how do you feel about these? Any of them excite you?
I think the only one that really excites me is Amman.
Yeah.
But the others, we'll see if they actually launch. It's not, we're currently in this game of we'll announce all sorts of stuff. Whether or not it runs is a whole different issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll have to see. There would have to be another massive downturn in pandemic-related border closures, I think, for things to revert and, shrink back, which, who the heck knows? But right now it doesn't seem terribly likely. I would be surprised if they come up with an excuse to close borders again, I guess is what I would say. Even if that would be a very, very hard change to make.
Absolutely agree with you.
So I think most of them will launch. I think the most interesting one to me, 737 MAX 8 to Punta Delgado, excuse me.
That is an interesting one. No flatbeds.
No flatbeds. It's also it's a distance-wise, it's the same as Newark to San Francisco, which does have flatbeds, but, for different reasons. I spoke with, was it Patrick Quayle, who's the senior VP of Alliances and International Routes or something like that. His comment was basically, it's backpackers and ethnic travel, he called it, which I guess is a term for VFR, or visiting friends and relatives. Families going home, and it's people who weren't going to pay for the flatbed, and for a 4.5 hour, even if it is middle of the night flight, 5 hour flight, you're not going to sell those flatbeds. So
yeah, that's an interesting one, right? Because SATA, or now Azores Airlines, flies Boston to, I think it's Ponta Delgada and a few other places in the Azores. And now you have Newark, I think there's actually a decent population of Portuguese Azorean folks in New Jersey. So it's an interesting play.
Yeah, I would expect it to work out pretty well, actually, for them in that context. Also, a lot of the routes are, I think, I'm trying to remember now, I think only Palma de Mallorca was daily. I think the others were all 3 times weekly, maybe. So not a huge commitment. And I guess it's a 767 to Palma de Mallorca. It has to, for range reasons, I think. The 757 is going to Tenerife and Bergen, and then it's a 787 Dulles to Amman.
788, I'm guessing?
Yes.
I believe so.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. I'm sorry, all the routes are 3x weekly.
Okay.
Maybe.
I'm
sorry. I'm correcting myself again. Punta Delgada is daily on the MAX.
So some of these, as part of this announcement too, they also announced some route deaths.
And some resurrections.
And resurrections and connecting additional dots. So Newark to Dublin gets a second frequency. Newark to Rome gets a second frequency. And I believe the Rome one is on the High J 76. Okay. Dulles to Berlin. O'Hare to Milan. And Denver to Munich. Those are all daily routes.
So the Denver to Munich, I was reading somewhere that it is actually replacing the Lufty service because Lufty is down on 350s.
Interesting. I was wondering about that because I was like, why would they... that's a lot of lift from Denver. If you had a 350, a 78, and then you have the Frankfurt flights, 2 Frankfurt flights.
Yeah, so it has to do with Lufty not being able to fly it, so UA is taking it over.
Gotcha.
Interesting. Yeah, it's this is the retired the A380s, and now it's backfilling and whatever.
Yep.
Yeah.
Started retiring the 380s, yeah. And then there's all the other routes that previously were announced but didn't launch because of the pandemic. So San Francisco, Bangalore, still on the plans, but now May 26th is the launch date. Newark to Nice will launch in April, and I think what's their name? La Compagnie is still planning on launching that next summer, and they're all business A321LR as well. Second daily Newark to Frankfurt, which also might be a High J config. Chicago to Zurich, which I'm almost starting as High J, and the Haneda service really picks up in the summer 2022 schedule, which starts March 26th, and that's Dulles, Los Angeles, and Newark move over to Haneda. And I didn't realize this at the time, and one of my readers pointed it out. O'Hare to Haneda had already started. So,
and is Japan going to be open by then?
Hard to say.
Yeah,
they've actually been picking up vaccination rate pretty quickly, so I think they could. It's just a matter of what their risk tolerance is, right? The Olympics in China are supposed to be spectator free, but 3 months later, IATA expects to have a major meeting, or 4 months later expects to have their annual general meeting in Shanghai, so who knows? So
the Winter Olympics in China are supposed to be spectator free?
That's what I read somewhere.
Huh, okay.
And then the cut routes, as you mentioned, San Francisco to Dublin and Newark to both Manchester and Glasgow will not be running in summer 22.
Now, I am. I'm just going to comment on these. I am surprised San Francisco Dublin isn't making it.
Really?
Yeah. Google has a big office, I guess, with remote work. It's kind of killed it, but they have a huge Dublin office, and of course, they're headquartered in San Francisco Bay Area. And then Apple has a big Dublin office as well. So I'm just surprised that it couldn't be sustained.
Yeah,
it probably has more to do with it's not getting the premium revenue.
Yeah.
And Aer Lingus is relaunching its route for 4 weeks over the winter, and then taking a break in January, and then bringing it back later in the spring. So, and that's 4 times weekly. But the whole long haul international travel and increased remote work, if it's just going to visit another office to like talk to other people you already work with, we've definitely seen more of that. I think more of that is going to be replaced by video call and stuff versus going to visit customers. And right, I think that the amount of business travel will come back slowly, relatively slowly, and especially on the long haul stuff. But the type of travel is going to shift.
Yeah. Bergen is another interesting one, especially killing Glasgow and what was the other one?
Manchester.
They've always struggled with Norway and the Nordics in general. United has.
Yeah.
Right? Like 752s flying to different spots, Stockholm, Oslo.
But they're bringing Stockholm back.
Yeah, that's what but they've always struggled with it, right? Like they've talked about killing it and then not killing it, and it's just weird.
Well, at one point it was an oil route.
Yeah.
Right, and that has since stopped. And so, they do well in the summer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the point at this, right now what it really looks like for these routes is it's all where can we get peak summer traffic. It has nothing to do with sort of more traditional business. That's why they're all less frequent. That's why they're all arguably smaller planes. But yeah, I
think like Foz, I'm most interested in the Amman flight just because of the
destination.
Yeah, I want to go to Jordan. And it's a cool line.
Yeah.
The others, Ponta Delgada is awesome. Maybe we'll finally get to go there as a group again since we had our failed attempt.
Yes, that was the January hurricane.
Yes. The fate did not align for us, I guess. Maybe it's for the better. I didn't get stuck on another island with you guys. So,
where's your sense of adventure?
The others, I'm not. I posted on Twitter, Tenerife, Palma de Mallorca. All that fills my head is like stag and hen parties and a lot of drunken Brits.
Well, see, I think Palma de Mallorca is going to be more drunken Germans.
You think so?
Wasn't Lufthansa running a 748 down there?
Oh yeah, they're all running crazy amounts.
Just saying that and Tenerife would be more Brit, or less blended at least.
Yeah, it's. No offense to our British friends, but there is a reason. When we go to these places, it's sometimes drunken stag parties. So, I don't know. I think a lot of people were like, "Oh, these are awesome routes." But to me, it's anyway. Okay, yeah.
And the places you want. Here's the thing, Stephen. They talked a lot about finding hip, cool places to visit for the next summer. And since you already live in Hipsterville, maybe you don't need hip places to visit.
Okay.
You're just going to book and cancel the trips.
Oh, shut up.
It's been a while.
I know. I haven't had a chance to do that. I haven't. The Haneda routes interest me as well. Like them actually starting up is I think a good thing. And I'm interested to see if they actually launch. But
they will.
See. Yeah, we'll see. Alitalia. Let's talk about them. Not dead yet. Oh, they're dead.
Yeah. Well, but not dead yet.
Like a phoenix rising from the ashes.
Yes. ITA Airlines. Actually, it sounds like ITA spent 90 million euro of Italian government money to buy the Alitalia brand from the Italian government in a different account. And apparently isn't going to use the name going forward.
That's fascinating to me.
So they bought it, but are just going to continue using ITA?
But are also using the AZ code and the Alitalia call sign with air traffic control?
Allegedly, they bought the name so no one else can use it.
Okay.
Which, I would say it's money laundering, except it's like the government's wasting money on itself, so I don't understand it all.
Maybe they listened to the podcast and they didn't want us getting it?
Yeah, but that's why they put the rule in that you had to be an actual airline.
Oh. Maybe they didn't get that memo.
Yeah. That we aren't one, or that they are.
Both.
It's also like it's an interesting new livery. It's a blue plane instead of white, so that'll be, and like a crazy weird stripe on the tail. I don't know. It's interesting, but yeah, it is dead except the parts where it isn't, which I find amusing. And then new loyalty program. Apparently, they're matching anyone and their brother to the status if you want it, but they can't. They can't bring across like points and credits from the old Mile Miglia program, because that was one of the specific restrictions the European government or the EU, EC, European Court or whatever, the regulators there put on it to say that it really has to be a new company. You can't take all your customers over with you. So I was talking to a buddy who has 5 million miles flown on Alitalia over the years, and done. That lifetime status, poof.
That was a poor life choice.
Now, I mean, he lives there, so. But yeah, he got screwed a little bit there. But apparently, the status, at least for a little while longer, is useful on Air France KLM and one other airline. I don't know.
So are they like no longer partners with Delta and stuff because it is a new airline, or how does that work?
That's something I haven't quite figured out. Like, Alitalia is still listed as a SkyTeam partner, but Alitalia sort of doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
So it's very hard to figure out. I think everyone was assuming that it would still just be Alitalia, so no one needed to change any of the names. But like, do all those contracts come over? Do they have to be renegotiated because it's a new airline? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a very weird situation right now because of that. So I don't know. This could very well be that, like, we've joked all along that Alitalia will never die, and it didn't, but maybe it sort of did. Yeah, Alitalia is still listed as a SkyMiles partner. No mileage to earn for Alitalia flights departing on after October 15th until further notice. So they are trying that. The partner contract did, in fact, die when the airline died.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah. So there you go. I'm glad I looked.
I mean, it's kind of a shocker to people, I think, if they're not paying attention. So,
yeah, I definitely know someone who was like, "Should I book an Alitalia flight now? It's cheaper and whatever, and blah blah blah." And it's like, for an international flight next spring. I was like, I mean, they have enough money right now from their initial funding that they should still be in business by next spring. It's after that you might, 2 years, 3 years from now, you might have to start worrying. But the initial funding should be plenty.
Yeah.
So,
now did they? I lost my thought. It's been one of those days.
Well, do you want to talk about some 787 issues then? Because those are always fun.
Really? Does it involve Rolls-Royce?
No.
Oh, wow.
It's a little surprising, honestly. I mean, but this is components in like the fuselage or something, right?
It was. Yeah, it's like a third-party vendor, right?
It was like a fourth-party vendor. It's weird. Leonardo, which is a major sort of sub-assembly company, was the supplier that delivered like the fuselage section, but one of its suppliers, which was also officially Boeing approved and everything else, apparently made some pieces that weren't to spec, and so there's concerns about the structural integrity of pieces of the fuselage or something like that, or how it's attached to the frame.
So I guess my biggest question is, do they know where these parts are and which planes they're in?
They believe they do. It's relatively newer aircraft, I think, like only over the past 3 years.
Okay, interesting.
Is this centric to the planes from South Carolina or both?
Both, because it's from a sub-supplier.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, the last couple of years, I mean, the part, I think they actually finally started deliveries again, which was a big deal because they had stopped for so long. So I think October actually had a 787 delivery finally, but who the hell knows if that's going to keep going at this point because all of these issues. And like, what is it going to take to backfill and clean and fix them?
Are the airlines having to pull them out of service?
Not yet.
Interesting. Okay, so there's been no AD or anything from the FAA.
Not that I've seen. I mean, I think we would have heard if there was that many grounded, just because United's got a bunch that are that new.
Yeah,
a bunch of airlines do. So
that's wild. So is this third-party vendor on the hook then to fix it, you think? Or is it Boeing is on the hook to go in and fix everything, or do we know?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I imagine Boeing's going to take the responsibility. Right?
Yeah. Ultimately, Boeing's on the hook, and then if they can go back and I guess like try to claim it from the sub vendor, I'm sure they'll try, but who the hell knows how that's going to work.
Yeah.
So, yeah, not great. Very not great. But, it seems to be sort of the way things are for Boeing these days. I mean, heck, like, former employee indicted. I didn't put that on the topic list.
No. Tell us more.
Former chief test pilot, criminal indictment for the MAX deaths.
And he's saying he's not guilty, right?
Oh, yeah. And his attorney has put out a public plea for everybody else who knows that he's just being made into a scapegoat to come forward and share how it really was, Boeing management that forced this to happen.
Can't it be both?
Yes. I was a little surprised when I originally read because right back in January, Boeing signed a deferred prosecution agreement as a company and paid an extra $250 million to avoid prosecution. And I thought that covered the people as well. And it turns out it does not. So it would be a shame if only the chief test pilot were punished for this, considering for him to be able to do it would necessarily require that like others in management would have to be sort of complicit as well.
Yeah,
in my mind.
Yeah, if they truly make him out to be the scapegoat, right, then I think that's a disservice to the people and their families.
Yeah.
Just because it paints Boeing as just, they're just a casual viewer of all this and they had no idea.
Right. And the statements I've seen thus far from representatives of the family is basically that. Don't let this guy just be the scapegoat. It was way bigger than just him.
Yeah. Well, good for them.
Yeah.
LaGuardia Airtrain is dead.
I'm a fan of that.
Really? You are?
I hated the AirTrain. The LaGuardia AirTrain was stupid. It went the wrong direction. It was going to connect to the wrong subway line. It was designed to only carry like 500 people a day or something like that at peak. Like that was going to be considered successful.
Wait, 500 people a day?
It was some absurdly low number.
How does that even make financial sense to put it in?
I have no answer for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
it was bad.
Refresh my memory. What was the subway line it was going to connect to?
It was going to connect to the 7 train at Shea Stadium at Citi Field / Willets Point. So it wasn't even an express stop. But it was. I mean, that's the closest 7 train station to LaGuardia, but it was going sort of further away from Manhattan. And then you get on the train, and then I guess you could transfer at Jackson Heights Roosevelt Avenue, which is arguably where it should have gone just on its own and where the express buses go today. Or once you got into Manhattan, transfer at other stations, Grand Central or Penn Station, I guess, or Fifth Avenue, Sixth Avenue. But it was a bad design. Like when you looked at the analysis of it and what they were trying to make happen, it was the number of people who it would benefit and would have a shorter trip time was disastrously low. It was basically Cuomo really wanted this air train and had his team eliminate all of the other options. So this was like the only one that could work. And it basically, the new governor, Hochuli, I forget what her name is, has now said she's suspended the work while it's being rebuilt. Oh, sorry, 3 to 5 million passengers annually, so 1,000 a day.
1,000. It's still low to me.
And that seems like round trip.
So 500 each way.
Yeah. The analysis, there was never a plan for a 30-minute ride to Manhattan. This is great. One of the quotes: "The purpose and need for the proposed action is not defined as reducing travel time. Travel time was not analyzed as part of the alternative screening process."
WTF?
Yeah, and only 40% of the travelers would use the 7 train. More than half would come in via the Long Island Railroad, but the reality is would drive and park at the garages out there or the lots out there and then connect in. Or
maybe not, right? If you're going to Penn, it'd be far faster to go there and take a LARR if you're going to the west side.
Yeah, I had that debate frequently from when I took the JFK Air train, which, don't get me wrong, isn't great, but is way better than what this was going to be. And the time savings between Jamaica and Penn Station was about 12 to 15 minutes. So if you had to transfer anyways, you generally lost that.
Well, I'm thinking, that's the only upside, though, of it being Met's Willett Point, right? Is that you can go to the LIWR station, either that or just to the 7 train, because they're so close to each other.
It's a shared space.
Yeah.
And that was the theory, but it's also the wrong LIRR line. It's only the it's the I forget which the Port Jeff. It's the Port Jeff line, right? It's it doesn't go all the way out onto Long Island, and it doesn't connect to any other trains like Jamaica.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I don't know if there was a good option, right? I mean, the express bus down to Jackson Heights, what is that, Roosevelt Avenue, to me makes the most sense, but how are you going to put an air train there?
How about a bus lane and enforce access and just let the buses run more frequently?
I'm with you. But that gives you access to what, three lines there? You can do the 7, the Q, not the Q, the R.
The C, or the E. The E is there.
The E, the F, and the M. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a ton of access to Manhattan.
Yeah.
And further into Brooklyn and Queens. So, I don't know. Crazy. So, I mean, what's the plan going forward? They abandon this, and do we get anything else?
They're going to have to try to figure something else out. They haven't decided yet.
Yeah. More buses.
Honestly, the buses were with a decent bit of. If they could put a protected bus lane in, it would actually be really nice. There's also like some really stupid stuff about in like picking it. Like the design guidelines require that no disruption could occur on the BQE at all ever during construction, even temporary. Like no temporary loss of a lane, no temporary loss of parking spaces anywhere along the path. It was so bizarrely structured in the evaluation that.
On the BQE or on the Grand Central?
Actually, on the Grand Central.
Okay, because I was going to say, wasn't going to touch the BQE.
No, I'm sorry, I get those. Always did when I lived there too, but get those mixed up sometimes.
So, I mean, that would be a cluster to disrupt that, though. That is a nasty intersection on the best of days.
But I mean, but you're trying to build something that's going to hopefully move more people. But then again, would it? Based on the data they had, probably not.
Well, but remember, a large portion of the traffic that would be going east from the airport would be in a car. It would not be taking a train. The only traffic would be removing from that road would be westbound.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, honestly, though, they say more than half the traffic is going to take the LIRR, so some of that will be into Manhattan, but I think they assume some would be outbound. I think that's a stupid assumption, but...
I'm sure, like, if you live in Port Jeff or something, you might consider it if you're at the true rush hour. But other than that, it'll always be faster to grab an Uber, and if your company's paying, most people don't care.
Yeah, I mean, if you told me, right, maybe this is because me personally, my New York experience. If you told me I could take a bus to Ditmars Boulevard in Astoria and get on the queue, that's perfect for me. Like, I would be ecstatic. But I don't think you can do that, right? Like, I have to go down to Jackson Heights, then come in. And
so there was the M60. What's the one? Is the one that comes across 125th Street? Mm-hmm. And I thought it touches that Ditmars station, but maybe not.
I don't know if it does anymore.
Yeah,
it might have.
Yeah,
but the problem is just that little drive from JFK from LaGuardia to Astoria could be 20-30 minutes
on Ditmars Boulevard. Yeah, because it is backed up and it is people cutting through, and yeah.
And I will again say, listen, New York City has plenty of trouble with enforcing useful traffic rules, and expecting any of it to get better in a way that might actually, be useful to people who use mass transit or bicycles is pretty silly to assume might happen. But a bus lane kind of works.
It's kind of like a bike lane, right? When people are parking.
Yeah, exactly. Usually the police officers. Anyways, what else we got?
Before you lose your mind, Ryanair is blocking chargeback customers.
This one was hysterical to me.
This sounds spicy.
Yeah, right. So Ryanair says we have a strict no refunds policy, and passengers who had a flight where they couldn't travel because like the border was closed and they couldn't get in, but the flight operated anyways, I think is the subset. Requested a chargeback from their credit card companies, and the credit card companies in many cases honored it. And Ryanair said, "Okay, that's cool, but you can't fly with us anymore."
That's ballsy.
Because the flight operated, I can almost understand, but it's still it's a bold move. Bold move, Cotton. Let's see how it plays out for them.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm just trying to understand. Like, okay, it operated, but with who on it? The crew. And
presumably people traveling the other direction, or maybe it was
people going back home to the
people who are resident. Yeah, people who are citizen of the other place.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the rule. Remember, like the rules were all super crazy and in flux, and no one knew what the hell was going on with any of it. So it was challenging to figure all that out. But operating the flight, but not letting. And I guess in some cases, Ryanair allowed some changes, but not all, and definitely not actual refunds. So not great. But yeah, telling them, and but also apparently didn't tell people that they were blocked from flying unless they paid up until very close to departure. So like they let them just book the ticket and then later bothered to inform them.
So that they can file another chargeback?
I guess. I don't know. It's like and I guess it's either that or hoping that they sort of had them on the hook and were like, yeah, if you want to fly, which now you finally can actually go on holiday and you want to, so we're gonna pitch over a barrel here.
Wow.
Yeah, that part I have a little less respect for. Like, if you want to tell people they can't fly with you and you're going to enforce that rule, cool. But like, do that from the get-go.
Yeah.
That has to be illegal in some ways.
You'd think.
We shall see.
Ryanair's based in Ireland, right?
Yes.
Headquartered, I guess, or incorporated in.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it has subsidiary airlines elsewhere around the continent. But yeah.
I'd be interested to see if people take it to the EU.
Yeah,
and have something done about it.
I think they have at least Buzz and Malta Air, or Buzz is in Poland, I think, and bet you can guess where Malta Air is based. Are two other like subsidiary operations that are part of the Ryanair conglomerate.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Short haul air tax is coming to Belgium. This is happening, seems to be a lot of places lately.
It's been a lot of discussion about it, whether it's a tax or just an outright ban on the flying. This one is, I think, 500 kilometers is the radius, which, okay, sure, fine. That would include London. So it's kind of amusing because, you have to cross a body of water to get there. There is the Eurotrain, whatever, the Channel, and what's it called? Eurostar?
They're Eurostar.
Eurostar, yep.
Sorry, my words aren't working this evening, apparently. Or my brain. So there's Eurostar. So there is sort of some option other than flying, but that one's a little harder for me to process. But Belgium to Brussels to Amsterdam, Brussels to Paris, like that, I could sort of see trying to encourage people to take the reasonably frequent and reasonably comfortable high-speed trains that are available right in the airport.
Yeah. No, I get that. I think that's the same. I think London is a little crazy. Some of the European routes or some of the, I guess, Central European routes that take multiple connections or things like that, but they're still within this 500 kilometer range. That could suck.
Yeah.
Where you could get a nonstop flight out of Brussels or something. So, I get it. It is what it is.
Yeah, this always comes back to one of those things that I struggle with a little bit, just in terms of like how the industry works. And there is, to a limited extent, some cooperation between, especially in Europe nowadays, between airlines and national rail services. Right, you can on Swiss, you can connect to Swiss Rail, and you got reasonable connections across the country. Very small country, right? Lufthansa, or really almost any airline, has options to connect with Deutsche Bahn. Like, there are some things like that exist, but all those companies have to make money, and so none of them really want to share the traffic. Whereas if you get socialists and say, no, we're actually providing infrastructure and transportation here, and the profit matters a little less, you could almost make an argument that it makes more sense to like sort of force some of those connections and make sure that they all have enough money to operate them. But it's and it would be probably more efficient. It would be a better use of the limited airspace resources. It would actually help accomplish many of the decarbonization goals that the airlines talk about a bunch these days and things like that, but also doesn't work in the free market, no government interference. Thank you very much, Italy, for funding yet another airline with another 1.5 billion euros that might or may not be illegal concept that we seem to be fighting against.
Yeah. I get it. I think it's free market, but I think there has to be some kind of, if the airlines wanted to actually, if that service was actually profitable, right? Let's say Brussels to Paris, if it was actually profitable, they would probably fly it more often. I think if I looked if you looked at, go ahead.
I was going to say, how many people are doing that as an O&D versus a connection, right? Think about all the African flights that Brussels flies. You don't have a lot of options to fly other carriers for some of those places. So it might just be a connection. And I presume that this doesn't apply to connections.
So like, I honestly don't know. In the ones in France where they were trying to do a similar thing and preventing those flights from Orly to anything within 2.5 hours on the TGV, it was explicitly O&D was prohibited, but connections were acceptable. The problem with that is that for the airline to fill a plane profitably, it often required both O&D and connecting traffic, and that's one of the challenges of a hub operation, is you need both. And so, okay, fine, the onward connections from Paris to Brussels to Lomé or wherever in Africa are great, but if you're only ever half filling the plane with those, and the other half is local traffic, and now you lose the other half, do you find a smaller plane? Do you cut frequencies? If you cut frequencies, you no longer have, useful connections. And so that becomes less competitive. And now maybe those people are going to end up connecting in Istanbul or Amsterdam or Madrid. Like there are cascading effects of decisions like that. And that goes back again to my, if it could sort of be coordinated, but they could still compete, that would be nice. But, the civil aeronautics board is gone, so we probably shouldn't bring it back.
Wasn't there an announcement that there was somewhere cutting those flights altogether? Like short flights like that?
France.
Like just like they're getting rid of them. Like
It was France.
It was France.
France did it for O&D traffic. I think Amsterdam was trying to block them outright. Actually, the Netherlands.
And that's what I was going to say. It was like, okay, so it doesn't even matter if it's O&D or connecting, right? Like those flights just don't exist. If you're going to Africa and you want to fly Brussels Air or any of the down there,
right?
You better take the train down to Brussels.
Yep. And so Amsterdam Brussels is actually, from what I recall, has been a published train route for a long time.
Yeah. And it's quick. Yeah. Relatively quick. So. But I mean, it just makes things. I mean, it makes things interesting. Could you imagine if we did that in the United States? Like,
had useful rail infrastructure?
Yeah, and you're if you were flying from Podunk, Nebraska, to somewhere international, you had to take a train. I think people might lose their minds.
Well, it's a much bigger country, right? That's the way you have to remember.
I'm just giving you crap, Paz.
I took the train in the U.S. last week. It was great until the conductor threatened me.
Threatened you? Tell us more.
Making a video out the back window.
I thought you. Oh my god.
Yeah. Suggested I was, more or less implying I was a terrorist. It was great.
So you get asked why you're taking photos on an Avello flight, and you say you're a journalist, and then you get told, well, that's strange. And then this
guy just came up and was like, hardcore, stop. You can't do that. You can take still pictures, but not videos. I'm like, what if it's still pictures 30 times a second? Is that cool? But I obviously didn't do that, but goodness did I want to. I'm trying to think, though. That's like the fourth or fifth different places mode of conveyance I've been told taking pictures on is illegal.
What are you? Were you?
I've got a pretty good collection of those now.
Were you like taking it on your phone?
Yeah. I was in the very last car, and so it had an open window, like a clean window, in fact, looking out the back of the train, and it was northeast. Leaves are changing. We're moving 100 miles an hour through the countryside on a reasonably pretty section of track, and I was making a time lapse. He's like, "No, you can recognize sections of the track." I'm like, "Uh-huh."
Oh, what's your point?
And like, as opposed to the Google satellite view that provides the exact same level of detail, I'm basically able to deliver. Anyway,
wow,
good times. Yeah, he was pretty cool. And then I was like, I'm actually like your company website says that as a passenger on the train, I'm allowed to take pictures and video. It's like, I didn't tell you to stop. It's like, cool.
That's what he said?
Yeah.
But he started with stop.
Well, this is a separate. When he came back later, I was like, I'm actually allowed to do this, right? And he's like, I didn't tell you to stop.
Okay.
Anyway, the owner of the JW Marriott in Phuket is suing Marriott.
Yeah, it turns out.
Isn't there like a phrase like "Don't bite the hand that feeds you," that kind of thing?
Yeah, but apparently Marriott has been abusing its relationship with the company in terms of putting other properties too close to it and using it as a way to sell the loyalty program, but not compensating the company enough for reward nights redeemed and silly little things like that. Okay. And more lawsuits are coming. More claims will be filed
from the same hotel or from different
from hotels? From the same ownership group.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is this just like some kind of like money grab from Phuket and Thailand being closed for so long?
I would say the loyalty programs have been abusing, particularly in the hotel arena, the hotels, right? They've assumed all the liability, and I wouldn't be surprised if, I think they haven't done much for the hotels.
Yeah.
Because they've been insulated. So
they're not taken care of when people redeem their points. They're not taking care of the hotel in a reasonable manner.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a mishmash of expectation as far as benefits. So God knows what people are doing when they get to the hotel, what benefits they're demanding.
Yeah.
And that also, the hotel takes the heat for it, even though it's a program that's opted not to pay for them.
Fascinating. I don't know how I feel about it. It's weird. It's just, I mean, I get what Foz is saying, but at the same time, like, what would you are you suggesting then, Foz, that people like guests going to the hotel are demanding, lounge access or meals or whatever, and that's not actually what Marriott is promising, or is Marriott promising those things but then not compensating the hotel?
Marriott might not be making it clear. Like with Hyatt's pretty straightforward, right? They've reduced amenities clearly, but there's every hotel I've been at in the last 18 months, they'll very much lay out, we're not doing this, this, and this, but we're doing this to make up for it.
Mm.
Right. The times I've stayed at a Marriott, it's just like, here's your keys, have a good day.
Yeah.
Oh, you got to have a good day out of them?
Sometimes.
I mean, I actually haven't had a particularly bad stay in the last 18 months anywhere, but there has definitely been a lot of, we're not doing any of these things, good luck ordering out.
Pound sand.
Yeah, just like, good luck.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't had a particularly bad stay, but Hyatt has been much more warm when you arrive versus any of the Marriott brands.
I think the only Marriott we stayed at I've stayed at is the one we stayed at in Burbank, Seth.
Yeah.
And there was nothing. I mean, I never even talked to anybody because I did the phone app. So, interesting though. I mean, it's a good point, Foz, is that it could just be that the hotels are getting screwed by Marriott corporate and not being given clear direction on what they shouldn't be doing. I
want to say this isn't the first lawsuit against one of the hotel companies. I feel like there have been a few now from hotel operators. So I don't think this is a one-off.
Yeah. One thing I was going to say about Phuket is it's actually opening to all vaccinated tourists as of October 2nd. I don't know if we brought that up on a previous show.
So it already has opened up.
It's opened up, yeah.
And I know Thai was doing a bunch of nonstop point-to-point flying straight there, so you didn't have to quarantine in Bangkok.
Yeah, and I think Thailand itself is starting to loosen up its requirements, and some of it's like the quarantine for non-vaccinated travelers is down to like a week or something. So interesting. I'm still a little hesitant to go to Asia and get stuck there. So I want to go, but I can't go. Last up, Sun Country. What is this? Routes and rides.
Buffalo, Burlington, Charleston, Jacksonville, Pittsburgh, Spokane, Vancouver. All coming next year.
To Minneapolis, I'm guessing?
To Minneapolis, yeah. Twice weekly. It's an eclectic collection of destinations, shall we say.
Yeah, that's one way to put it.
Vancouver's a big deal, crossing the border.
Yeah.
It is interesting that both Sun Country and JetBlue, which both historically did not do Canadian flights, are both choosing Vancouver as the place they're going to start.
Well, Vancouver has very high yields.
Yeah. Got to do it. Makes up for some of the, you can charge more, which makes up for the fact that the taxes in Canada are generally higher.
Right.
Which hurts the low-cost carriers or folks trying to sell budget fares. Yeah, it's an interesting set of routes. I don't know. None of them do anything personally for me, but I guess maybe if I would go visit my parents in Florida, I could take the Jacksonville route. I don't know.
You're not going to go running to Sun Country?
I have tried many times to make it work in my schedule, and the connection, like LA to Minneapolis to Boston or New York, usually involved an overnight in Minneapolis.
Is that how their network is pretty much built? It's that
a lot of point-to-point flying?
I got you.
I mean, our O&D travel, right? I think that the number of connecting passengers they bring is relatively low compared to sort of like a JetBlue, right? Where, if I remember correctly, I mean, obviously the numbers have all changed, but in the before times, JetBlue, even when things were running great, was like maybe 20% connections, never an 80% O&D, whereas Delta or any of the other legacies were way higher number of connecting passengers.
Well, in the case of Sun Country, depending on when you fly them, it might just be D and no O.
And you're still pretty hung up on that flight where they canceled it and then didn't pick anybody up, aren't you?
Yeah. Yep.
And I'm the smug.
Over, sorry.
I'm the smug, sarcastic one.
Listen, boss, the season ended. What do you want from me?
I know. Plane has to come back, but we're not going to bring anyone back.
Well, and to be clear, Vancouver, right, on Sun Country was originally supposed to start in May of 2020, and it got canceled because of COVID.
Okay.
So that's why they're now starting it back up. I think Delta's going to have a field day with them, but they don't seem to be winning.
I thought the way you just, generally that phrase is used to describe someone showing up and beating the shit out of the other person, and I don't think it's happening that way.
I feel like Delta's trying, but then they just don't. I don't know.
I think Delta, Sun Country is nothing more than an ankle biter.
They are really small. Like twice a week to half dozen destinations isn't going to matter enough.
Yeah, and I'm guessing Delta doesn't care about low yield.
No, I mean, look, most people like Minneapolis. Like, before Delta was Northwest, right? Sun Country's been around for a long time, and it has been the fortress hub for a long time, and their yields are crazy out of that. Yeah, and it's sure, let someone come in. I mean, even Southwest flies there, but Delta doesn't really see much of an impact.
Yeah,
I will say it has been interesting to watch Sun Country sort of continue to expand, and they've also started doing cargo flying for Amazon and some other stuff. But maybe they get to start. They are continuing to grow. Maybe they get to be big enough that Delta has to start paying attention. But it's interesting.
Where do they fly out of in Minneapolis, St. Paul?
Humphrey Terminal.
Oh, really?
The other terminal, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, the remote one or the?
No, the remote one.
Yeah, the one where Southwest flies out of, not the main terminal.
Gotcha. Okay.
So the other thing I put in there, though, is the rides part of this, and this is actually more interesting to me. They're going to start selling an option for SUV to take you to or from your house as part of the trip.
Okay.
So, like, United has, Uber Link in the app, and, like, some other airlines have done similar types of things. JetBlue has an option to book with Ground Link, which is sort of a nationwide reseller of car services. But this is going to be one where you get in the car at your house in an SUV. They drive you to the terminal. They handle your bags from there on. You go straight to the security checkpoint. And added bonus, as long as you have booked them, if you get stuck in traffic or anything, it's considered a protected connection.
That's probably the best feature.
Yeah, but what they don't say is you have to they have to schedule to arrive at the airport 3 hours in advance. So you actually are.
Oh,
like
crap!
I mean, and I don't know what the actual time is, but like I'm thinking super shuttle. Like, yes, my flight is at 10. Okay, good. We'll pick you up at 2. Like, no. That's the only way to guarantee we'll get you to the airport on time.
I the airport's 20 minutes from my house.
Yeah.
If I literally book it so that I'm at boarding, like I'm going through security when they start boarding.
Yeah,
that's how I book my car rides,
which is great, right up until the point that like you hit 15 minutes of traffic. So
that's fine. That's fine.
It's just like I don't want to go anyways.
I didn't want to go that bad. If the traffic's that bad, I don't want to.
Yeah, it's the other interesting thing is it's actually in partnership with Landline, who's the company that runs the buses for them. So the other sort of smaller Minnesota towns.
So can we talk? I mean, this is basically like some countries becoming Emirates, right? I mean, it's
limo
like
service.
Yeah, it's like limo service.
I wouldn't quite call it like Emirates. Maybe Bizarro Emirates. That's a bit of a stretch.
They'll have service to Baton Rouge before Emirates does.
That is
but
true.
Not on a 380.
Hey,
maybe I'll switch it to a 777X. It's cool.
Yeah. So for our Patreon subscribers, we got a couple of topics coming up, including some American Airlines JetBlue reciprocity issues, and some Air Canada jacking up of qualifications due to increased demand, we'll call it. So if you're a Patreon subscriber, just stick around for that. If not, you can become a Patreon subscriber. But if you don't want to do that, this is the end of the show. And we thank you for listening, and you can follow us on Twitter at @DotsLines, more dots, more lines.com. Until next time, happy travels.
Take care.
Catch you next time.